This is an English trunk, leather on softwood, from the 1830s. And it's stood on a Chinese export trunk, made in one of the Chinese ports with camphor wood, leather on camphor wood, for export to the Westerners passing through the ports, or sometimes shipped back to England and America by captains of the East India Company ships to resell in Europe, in England and America. And if you look closely, you can tell the difference between the two trunks, between the English and the Chinese export. The Chinese export has got brass corners and brass edges, whereas this English one has got tin corners and tin edging. They've both got brass studs. Typically on an English trunk, it's not so clear on this example, the studs will have a wider gap between them than the Chinese export. Not so obvious on this example, but that's one of the things that we look at. If we turn it around and we look at the side handles here, you can see Chinese export have brass carrying handles, English have got iron carrying handles. If we look to the interior, we can see that this English one is lined partly in linen and partly in paper, which has been simply printed in a dot pattern. And most English trunks, certainly of this sort of period, you'll find them lined with printed paper. Sometimes it's newsprint, which has been overprinted with a dot pattern or a star pattern. Sometimes it's plain paper. So that's another way of telling the difference between an English and a Chinese export trunk. You won't get this sort of paper lining on a Chinese export trunk. But the main reason that confirms this is an English trunk is that we've got a lovely label here for J. Allen camp equipage. And J. Allen were a very well established company of luggage makers and campaign furniture makers who were established in 1798. And J. Allen was the name that they used up until about 1849, when they became J.W. and T. Allen, John Allen's two sons, John William and Thomas Allen. So purely from the label, we know that this trunk is pre-1849. Now, another reason is this label to the top. So I'm going to come off tripod and we're going to zoom in a little bit so you can see some of the detail. So this brass nameplate, hopefully you can see that, is for Lady Elizabeth de Rede Ginkle, and she was the daughter of the 7th Earl of Athlone. Now, we know that she married the Honourable Frederick William Child Villiers, son of the 5th Earl of Jersey, in 1842. And this is her maiden name here. So that takes us down a little bit further in date from 1849 to pre-1842, before she got married. And her husband, Frederick, was in the Coldstream Guards and the 73rd Perthshire Regiment, and then went on to be elected as an MP in 1847. And the couple lived in Hanover Square in London, so quite a smart address to befit their status. But the main reason that we can date this trunk to the 1830s is from the lock. So if we open up the lid and come down, and we have a closer look here. Now you can see, I don't want to go out of focus too much, but just here we've got a crown with WR. And if you see WR, which is William Rex, we know that he was only king from between 1832 and 1837. So that gives us a 5-year date line for the making of this trunk. So that's really quite precise. Now, as we've got the lid open, let's have a little bit of a closer look at this wonderful label for Allen. Now, you can see that it's their earlier address of 22 Strand, corner of Hungerford Street, and it tells you a little bit there about the sort of things that they do. And Allen are a very, very well-known, famous company for both luggage and campaign furniture. There's an awful lot written about them that we've put on our website, and if you go to campaignfurniture.com and then look under makers and go to Allen, there's an awful lot for you to read there about them, and lots of examples of items we've had of theirs in the past, trunks and campaign furniture. So while this lid is open, we can have a little bit of a closer look at the overprinted paper that I was talking about and the linen interior. So that helps us understand this trunk a little bit more, and also to be able to date it to a 5-year period, which is quite unusual, and for us as history and antique geeks, very, very exciting. One other thing I just want to show you is I want to tip the trunk up a little bit. And show you that it's got 3 sledge feet underneath, and also cut into the sledge feet you've got these holes, and also on the other side there you can see it's a little bit chewed up there, but there is a hole, and those would be to take belt straps which would help secure the trunk, that would go over the top of the trunk. So there's a English leather on softwood trunk with tin edging and brass stud work, made by J. Allen of 22 The Strand, London, and dated to between 1832 and 1837 from the WR on the lock.